Have you ever wondered how to read a written crochet pattern or how to use one of these picture diagrams? Well, I'm going to help you answer that today. Hi, my name is Emwata and this is How to Crochet 101. In today's video, we're going to learn how to read written crochet patterns and how to use picture diagrams. So first off, the written crochet patterns. One thing to note is that there are two types of written patterns. There is the American version and the international version. The international version is sometimes called the UK version. Now, for both of these versions, the stitches are the same. The only difference between the two is the terminology. For example, in the American version, what we would refer to as a single crochet would be called a double crochet in the international version. A half double crochet in America would be a half treble crochet in the international version. A double crochet in America would be a treble crochet in the international version, and so on and so forth. Here is a helpful table to show you the different terminology in both of the two versions. That's because most crochet pattern writers are going to include in their pattern whether or not they're using the US version or the international version. However, in case they don't mention it, look out for the term single crochet to figure out whether it's a US or international pattern. If you see the term single crochet, then you can be rest assured that that is a US pattern. However, if you don't see the term single crochet, it might still be a US pattern, so you need to double check. You can try and look at where the author is from if they have that information, or other little clues that could give you an indication of whether or not this person is using the US version or the international/UK version. So to show you how easy it is to follow a written crochet pattern, I'm going to use a pattern from this creator called For the Frills. So this is a pattern for a very simple beginner-friendly crochet crop top. If you're looking for something to make for your first crochet project, I would highly recommend it. Feel free to check out the full pattern through the link in my description box. So this pattern starts with a foundation chain. We've already learned how to do foundation chains in previous lessons. As you can see, the number of chains depends on the size that you are making this crop top for. This creator also included a helpful sizing guide so that you know exactly how many chains to make for the size that you're going for. She also tells you what crochet hook that she uses and what size of yarn that she uses, so you can plan accordingly. So because I'm just giving you a short tutorial, I'm not going to make the full 40 something or 50 something chains. I'm just going to make 20 chains to show you. Now, the next part of this tutorial is row 1. So in row 1, she asks us to HDC into the second chain from the hook. So as we learned previously, HDC stands for half double crochet. And so this is clearly the American crochet term, because for the UK one, it is, I believe, half treble crochet. So we also learned how to do a half double crochet in the previous lesson. So we can simply make that half double crochet into the second chain from our hook. Next, she asks us to HDC in each stitch until the very end. So that just means half double crochet in each stitch until the end. Most of the time, if a crochet pattern writer includes short abbreviations like ST, which in this pattern means stitch, then they're going to include it somewhere in their pattern. So she includes it somewhere in her pattern that ST means stitch. So don't worry if you come across random abbreviations and stuff. Most likely they will explain to you what each thing means. Now I'm going to leave you to check out the rest of the crochet pattern tutorial. Written patterns are quite straightforward. They just simply require you to be able to follow step-by-step instructions exactly. There isn't much to it. Only thing that you may have to think about slightly is which version that the writer is using and also what size you're trying to make for.
Okay, so now that we've finished talking about our written crochet patterns, let's come to the very, very interesting crochet diagram. Now, when I first saw these, I almost burst into tears. It looked so complicated. I didn't even know where to start. I didn't know what any of the symbols meant. But now that I've been able to figure it out, it's actually quite straightforward. When it comes to crochet diagrams, each stitch is represented by a particular symbol. And so the crochet diagram just shows you all of the different symbols put together to make up the pattern. I'm also going to include a table here to show you what each of the symbols mean, so that when you see all of these symbols in the crochet pattern, you know what they mean. So there are generally two styles of crochet diagram patterns. They're the ones that look like this, where the crochet stitch kind of starts out from the center and spirals outward like this. Or they're the crochet diagrams that kind of are made up into rows. So it's going horizontally, left, right, right, left. So with that in mind, the very first step of reading any crochet diagram is figuring out where the beginning stitch is. Like I said, there are two types of crochet diagrams. The ones that look like this, where it's spiraling out from the center, for those types, the first stitch is the stitch in the middle. While for these other types of diagrams that are more horizontal, the beginning stitch is usually at the bottom, probably at the left. And most of the time they start with foundation chains. As you can see, this symbol, this like thin oval symbol, is the symbol for chain. And you can see there are many chains like this. Most of the horizontal patterns like this start with a foundation chain. So after you find the beginning stitch, you need to find the next way out. So for the horizontal diagrams, it's a pretty straightforward exercise, because you're just going from left to right, right to left, left to right, right to left. But for these diagrams where the stitch comes out from the center, it can be a little bit tricky. But the key thing to figuring out this type of diagram is that you want to look at the beginning stitch, which is the one at the center, and look for the nearest set of chain stitches next to it. As you can see, the stitch at the center is made up of chains. So I'm going to use this simple granny square diagram from thisiscrochet.com. So first I'm going to make 4 chain stitches. Then, as you can see, there is a set of 3 chains that are coming out from here. And before that, there is a slip stitch. So I'm going to make a slip stitch, and I'm going to make the 3 chains. Then I'm going to make 2 chains, 3 double crochets, another 2 chains, 3 double crochets, another 2 chains, 3 double crochets, another 2 chains, and 2 double crochets. Now I'm going to make a slip stitch, and then I'm going to make another slip stitch in between these 2 chains. Now I'm going to make another 3 chains to begin the next row. I'm going to make 2 chains and follow it up with 3 double crochets underneath these 2 chains, underneath the previous 2 chains. Then I'll make 1 chain, then 3 double crochets in the 2 chain space, then another 2 chains, then I'll make 3 double crochets in the same 2 chain space. This is because all of these crochets are pointing out from these 2 chains as you can see here. Then I'll make 1 chain and then follow it with 3 double crochets in the 2 chain stitch, in the 2 chain space, then 2 more chains and 3 double crochets, 1 chain, 3 double crochets in the 2 chain space, 2 chains, 3 double crochets in the same 2 chain space, 1 chain, and 2 double crochets in the 2 chain space. Now I'm going to make a slip stitch and another slip stitch in between these 2 chains over here. Basically, the way to start a new row is just to keep finding the next set of chains that will lead you from the last row to the new row. I hope this makes sense. Feel free to replay it as many times as you need to.